Thank you, Karen. I love the piece in that reading about the clergy person, the pastor in that case, not knowing the answer. I think if you have spent any time in deep conversation with me, or maybe not even that deep a conversation, you will have experienced me saying, you know what, I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out. Or, you know what, I don't know, and that's okay. But I do have some answers sometimes. Generally, don't think of my answers as the final answer. That's a lot more hubris than I'm physically capable of fitting in my body. Some people fit it in much smaller bodies. I don't know how they do it. But here we are. So I have this box. It was decorated to be the question box. My favorite thing about a question box service might be the excuse to buy a bunch of art supplies and just glue them to a box. That is one of the best parts of this job, is that I get to be like, craft project, and then make whatever nonsense has come into my head. So this is some nonsense of a box that Caitlin and I created. Inside, and also in my phone, I have questions that have been submitted by all kinds of people in this community. I know that the youngest person who submitted a question was 5. I do not know how old the oldest person who submitted a question was, because I am not sure who the oldest person who submitted a question was. But it runs the gamut. New people, people who have been here forever, questions that are really serious, questions that are really long, questions that are really short, questions that are really silly. And the ones out of the box will come in a completely random order, and the ones from my phone will come in the order they came in, interspersed between the ones from the box. So that's the setup. Let's get to it. Now, this one is not like the other ones. The other ones are on note cards, so I know what this question is, but it's a good place to start. And it says, but for real, who is your favorite staff member? And for real, my answer is Calliope. Calliope is Robin's service dog, who is the best. Little tiny, very cute, a very helpful member of our staff. Calliope is my favorite staff member. And then we get into something more serious. How do we fix age discrimination in our community? Yikes, big question. And fixing things is hard, right? Age discrimination, ageism, both against young people and against older people, is a very real thing in our society. So what do we do as a community to kind of resist the tendency to think that people under 25 and over 75 don't know things worth knowing? Well, I think we start with everybody has knowledge and experience that matters. Somebody might be 5 years old, some people are, and not know a lot of things about the world, but have a perspective that really matters. Your average 5-year-old is better at sharing than a lot of adults are, is better at knowing when the things you've said are mean than a lot of adults are. Your average 5-year-old has a stronger sense of justice than a lot of adults do. So we need to listen when not just our littlest kids, but our youth, our young adults, we have youth and young adults, when they say, hey, I want to do this, or hey, this is really messed up. We need to listen and not say, oh, you're too young to know things, or you'll get over that. I was a younger person than I am now who was frequently told that I would get over things as I got older, and as it turns out, no. I did not get over many of those things. In fact, my care for those things only got more intense. Young people know things. We need to listen. And I would love if any of our young people would like to come and have a meeting with me, tell me, what do you want? What do you need? What would it be like for this community to feel like it's really yours? So that's half of it. And then we have this other half where people get to a certain age and people stop taking them seriously. And in a community like ours, where many of our members are older people, there's a slightly different cultural thing going on there. But it's worth remembering that people who have been around have seen a lot of things. Someone who's been a member here for 30 plus years knows stuff about what this community has been that can speak to what this community is and is going to be. We need the energy of new, but we also need the connection of time. Religious community, I'm gonna go ahead and use that word, this is a religion. Religious community is cool because it can hold those things together. It's one of the few spaces in American society where you are expected to interact with people who aren't your age. We've gotten really good at being a society made up of age cohorts that not only don't interact a lot outside of their immediate family, but are made to feel like they live on completely different planets. But as it turns out that we speak differently and sometimes we think differently, we all live here on this planet. And so part of the project is to practice hearing each other past all of those biases, including the one that says that young people can't know anything or that older people are out of touch and have nothing relevant to say. That is the beginning of an answer to that, but I think I will stop there so I can get to other things. Many of these could be their own platform on their own. I'll go with one from the digital question box now. Is there room in ethical culture for finding inspiration from or doing thought experiments based on the idea of reincarnation? Yeah, I think there's room for thinking about and talking about all kinds of things. Whether or not that becomes something a lot of people want to do is another question entirely, one that I have a much harder time answering. I don't know how people would go along or not with that conversation. But if it's something you're interested in, as far as WES goes, if you can get 3 people who want to have a discussion with you, we will get you a room. We are willing to support whatever kind of exploration you are interested in. It's not much of an answer, but it's the one I've got. All right, we're back into the box now. What is this? How do we make things like Wednesdays at WES sustainable with so few volunteers? This is an ongoing issue that we have kind of everywhere. We don't have enough volunteers to do half of the stuff that we would like to do. In fact, we often don't have enough volunteers to do the stuff that we are already doing. How do we do it? We show up as much as we can. I have a lot of gratitude for the folks who show up to our monthly Wednesdays at WES gatherings and help, right? It's great that you're there. It's also great when you move a table or wipe a table down. I think the other thing is that WES has this history that everybody has, which is a pandemic, but this history before that of having enough money to have a really full staff. And when you have a really full staff, it can become easy to say, oh, well, it makes sense for a staff person to do that thing I don't want to do. We don't live there anymore, and none of your mothers live in this building. And given that only one person on the staff is a mother, and she's not your mother, you gotta remember that everybody is doing this project. Some of us are paid to do specific pieces of it, but everybody can wipe down a table, and everybody can help someone who isn't able to carry a table, and everyone can be like Ruth and a number of other people who said, hey, we need coffee, and then did it. So a lot of it is about just seeing where there's something that needs to be done and doing it. Do you, in your own home, wait for someone else to come around and like wipe the table off? Probably not. So if you see that there's a table that's had cookies on it and it's got dust on it, wipe the table off. If you don't know where the stuff is, someone will tell you. That's okay. If you really want there to be a flourishing Wednesday evening community meal, maybe offer to cook it so Robin doesn't always have to. If you want there to be a certain type of programming, volunteer to find someone to do it, or volunteer to collaborate with me or another staff member on it. We need your participation, and this is all going to be much more fun and much more sustainable if we're all doing it. Much of that was a lecture on cleaning up after yourself. Who guessed? All right, back into the box. Aha, we have a question from one of our youngest question askers, Lily Rose, who asks, ice cream or ice skating? Ice cream. I don't like to fall, and that is all I am capable of doing when I ice skate. Another question? Would you rather sit or stand? I would rather do both in turns. Neither is great as a permanent situation. Another Lily Rose question. What? Girl, same. I also would like to know what. I'm gonna go back into the online questions for something rather more serious that friends definitely need a whole platform to actually address. So I'm gonna give you the briefest version of an answer that I can arrive at. And then probably I'm gonna come back to this in the spring because it's important and big. So, how do you plan to lead WES through the rise of global authoritarianism? Right? Good question, whoever this was. This is a great question. This is an important question. I have to say that my first response was, at this point, I'm just glad that you know that that's happening. I have a little bit of what I'll call Cassandra syndrome, where I was a person who was saying, hey, it's gonna be fascism in like 2014, which made me feel pretty crazy for a while, because I would say, hey, I see this thing. My friends would say, hey, we see this thing. And people would say, no, that couldn't happen. Even throughout the 2016 election cycle, no, he's not gonna get elected. No, he doesn't really believe those things. So I've spent a lot of the last 7 years just kind of trying to figure out how to get through what was happening. But the other thing that I've done is try to orient my life and my approach to doing community in such a way that the events of the world don't require me to radically shift what I'm doing, so that I am always already thinking about the real threat of authoritarianism, the real threat of fascism, not just here, but around the world. So to some degree, I am already leading WES in the way that I plan to lead WES through this rise in global authoritarianism, in part because it's already been happening, and in part because it's the thing that I most believe I need to do. And that is collaborate. The opposite of totalitarianism, the opposite of authoritarianism is mutuality, connection, creativity, and working together. The opposite of hierarchy is shared leadership. The opposite of authoritarian fascism, which is super hierarchical, is putting us all as clearly on the same plane as humans as is conceivably possible. Now, I live in the world, and I am as much swimming in the water of oppressive hierarchy as anybody else, and so I will make mistakes. Please tell me when I make mistakes. I would like it if you were nice when you told me, but like, sometimes I might be wrong enough that not being nice is fair. That's okay. The situation that the world is in is going to be hard to get out of. And it's not enough to get back to where we were before we noticed it was going wrong, because it was going wrong well before we noticed. It was going wrong before I noticed in 2014. It was going wrong before other people noticed in 2016. It was going wrong before I was born in 1988, to be perfectly honest. So much of how the world was built lends itself to this kind of authoritarianism, to domination and exclusion, to necropolitics, which is, we'll get into that later. I'll do that another day. But basically about controlling life by controlling death, deciding that as long as other people die, your death is less real to you. It's so based on that, like at its very core, that there are things that we have to do to shift that we couldn't hope to do with electoral politics. That we can only actually do by living into something different. So a lot of my goal for leading WES through what is going to be is to help us be a place where we do something else. Where the point isn't winning and the point isn't someone being the most right, but the point is that we do it together. Where the point isn't that anything is perfect or anyone has all the answers, but that we come together and create things and then try again and try again. And don't get too caught up on a perfect or a final version of anything, because everything is still always happening. Again, I'm gonna have to come back to that because there is a lot there, but I think that's enough answer for right now. And I hope that if you have questions further about that, you will come back when I get around to giving that platform in the spring. Or you'll come talk to me, because I have a lot of thoughts, all the time, so many thoughts. All right, let's see what we got next. We are back to the questions from Lily Rose. This question seems to be Lily or hot coffee. And that's a difficult question, actually. But I'm gay, so iced coffee. And in general, Lily Rose. I pick the children over my own sense of being awake. Another Lily Rose question. Would you like to play soccer? No. I would, however, happily witness other people playing soccer. Not a lot of coordination. Lots of thoughts, not a lot of coordination. I'm getting low on paper cards, so I'm gonna go back into my digital questions. What's your advice for doing community as an introvert? This person says, I'm not as bad off as the person who says, I love humanity, it's people I can't stand. But with some exceptions, just being with people isn't something I really enjoy. My approach to life at WES has been to focus on mission and task-oriented groups more than social groups and groups for sharing stories and ideas. Does that seem like a good way to go? And do you have any other suggestions? My first suggestion to everybody is to drink more water. So doing community as an introvert is complicated. I am not an introvert. I am deeply ambiverted, which is to say I play an extrovert on TV and an introvert in my house. Caitlin is an actual introvert, and I found out that I was not an introvert when we started living together. And I realized the degree to which Caitlin needs way more not people time than I do. It is totally fair if just being with people doesn't light you up. Part of the point is that whatever lights you up gets to light you up. And I will say that I am super thrilled when people decide that the way they're gonna engage is mission and task oriented, in part because we really need that, and in part because the mission is the big thing here, right? It's easy if a community like this is too full of extroverts for it to become all socialize and none get stuff done. We need a balance. So if you find that what's better for you is maybe you come on Sunday, but you like it best when you have a task to do, please believe me, we can find you a task. We can find you a task where you don't have to talk to anybody. we got options. If you find that coming in person feels a little intense for you, come on Zoom, that's the same. You can be in your house and still be here, that's okay. And if you find that you feel like nervous about the social stuff, if you're a person who, like me, socializes better when they have a role, that's okay. We can give you a role, one, right? Your role could be say hello to new people or check in and see how the coffee is. Talk to people about coffee. But I'd also like to encourage you, if you feel up for it, underline to if you feel up for it, to try out a little more socializing. Not because you have to, but because you might meet someone who has really similar experiences to you, because there is no chance in the entire world that you're the only introvert here. Zero. I've met you people. If there are more extroverts than introverts, I will be on the floor, gobsmacked. So yeah, question asker, your approach of focusing on tasks and mission-based stuff, A+. And for anybody else experiencing that, if you want to talk to me, please do. I am happy to talk to you. And if you don't, that's also okay. You get to make your own choices. All right, I'm going to stay here in the digital questions, and I'm going to go to the next one, which is, how can we get more people to join the chorus, especially people with low voices? Signed, Barry Piter. So, I don't have a real answer, but my joking answer, and please hear that this is a joke. Please hear that this is a joke. Please hear that this is a joke. Dose people with testosterone. That was a joke. That was a joke. Hear that it's a joke. I also, yes, Adam. Adam says, directions unclear, dosed self with testosterone. Same. All right, next question. The next question is a long one, and I'm going to read the whole question, though I will admit I don't actually understand the whole question. Street epistemology is a technique. Someone trained in street epistemology, a street epistemologist, or SE, can help people explore their beliefs and values. I will call the person who an SE converses with an explorer. An SE helps an explorer find places where their beliefs or values may conflict, find surprising implications, and better understand the sources of those beliefs and values. As a result of conversations with SEs, people frequently feel more aligned with themselves and decrease their attachment to components of their internal narrative that harm themselves and others. Avoiding one's own opinions and maintaining a non-judgmental atmosphere where the explorer can see their beliefs, values, and narratives with minimal distortion is a critical part of learning to be an SE. However, this is difficult for humans. We could use reinforcement learning with human feedback to train a large language model, like ChatGPT, to be an SE. Other, less costly techniques could get us more than 90% of the way there. My question for you is whether we should train an LLM SE. On the one hand, an LLM would have different biases than a human and thus could be more effective. An LLM would also be more approachable. People would feel comfortable exploring themes they would feel embarrassed to reveal to a human, could be more honest about their thoughts and reasons. On the other hand, part of the benefit of street epistemology is that it helps bridge divides between people. A well-trained SE can speak to anyone and develop empathy, and I'm not going to finish reading this question. There are 2 more paragraphs. Thank you very much, question asker. This is a really good question that I do not know enough about the technology involved to give a full answer to. But later in the question asker mentions that there are risks. And to me, some of those risks are that computer-trained things inherit the biases of their trainers, right? If you teach a computer how to respond to people, it will respond to people more or less like you will. So you wind up with the same human issue where a person might have biases and they might not know about them and they might show up then in the program, which is different from when it runs into in an actual person, right? Because in an actual person, you have that experience of being with someone and being able to feel your way through rather than strict logic your way through, which is all that a computer can do. So I'm gonna go with no, I don't think that we should do this, but I think that it's a conversation worth having. And I'm also gonna say that if you wanna talk about AI and philosophy as a together project, I'd suggest you talk to Peter Bishop, who knows both of those things differently than me, and AI certainly better than me. Okay, I've done that. That was the scariest question, not the one about authoritarianism, the one about AI, because there's a lot of tech that is not. I went to nerd school, but I can't code. I'm a millennial in that way. Anyway, back into the box. How does WES continue to exist and thrive as a multi-generational community with an increasing median age of our population? So that's related to our ageism question earlier, but kind of in a different direction. But the answer is actually very similar. The answer is that we have to listen to our young people. We have to engage people in new ways, and we have to be ready to do things differently than we've done them before. People of different age cohorts like different things, and this is not to pick on the chorus or anyone who chooses music for them, in part because I am part of that community of people who picks music now, but if the most modern music you play is from the 70s, which it isn't, we actually do a lot better than that, how is anybody born after, I don't know, the 70s supposed to feel like this is a place that is current and relevant? That's not to say we can never play music from the 70s, the 1970s, the 1870s, the 1770s, like, that's fine, we can do all of it. But we could also play music from the 90s and the 2000s and now. Music, though, is just a little piece of it, right? We have to think about all of the ways that life is fundamentally different now than it was when, not even I was a kid, but when I was a kid, right? We're gonna call me the youngest person who isn't a young person. I'm 35, that sounds about right. So when I was a kid, it was still normal for people to go to a congregation on Sunday morning. More normal probably in my hometown than here, but in the 80s, it was still pretty common for there to be significant social pressure to go somewhere on Sunday. And ethical culture societies and UU congregations really recruited pretty hard on that, right? You needed to go somewhere, and here is a place that you can go that feels better than the other places. But if you don't have to, why would you? The constant question for me, actually, I love congregational life. I love Sunday morning. This format works for me. It doesn't work for a lot of people who are my age and younger, and in fact, a lot of people who are older than I am. We gotta have more things, which is hard to do without more volunteers. So here we are, stuck in a little Ouroboros of problems. But we can make what we do already more accessible. We can advertise the things that we do in a wider range of spaces. We can reach out to people in our communities, and that might mean that our demographics stay as they are, because if everybody brings one friend, we will simply be one person larger, more or less horizontally. But we can also make a point of trying to be a space that is ready for families with young children to be in, right? And we've been working on that. We have Seek much more often, we have childcare much more often. That is helping. We are seeing more families with younger children. We can listen, again, I'm gonna harp on this, we can listen to our young people. They know things, they know things, they know things, they know really important things. And on top of that, if this is a place that they like coming, they might ask their friends to come. Or they might actually be here, like some of them are right now, which I'm really, really thrilled about. Yeah, it's a complicated question, and congregational community leans older. That is true now and pretty much always. The people with the most routine lives tend to be the people who are older. It has been common for decades for people to age out of their youth program, leave for most of their 20s, and return when they themselves have children. I would love it if our young people felt like they could be held by our community in that leaving high school, moving into whatever's next period of their life. But I also understand the need to kind of go and do your own thing. But with what we've got, we gotta listen, we gotta try, and we have to be ready for it to be different. You can't include more people and keep things exactly the same. That is true regardless of what demographics you're talking about, what you're looking to change. You cannot stay the same and change at the same time. I mean, you can, but the same thing cannot stay the same and change at once. We cannot have more people who are different from the people who are here and continue to do things exactly as we have. I feel like I'm talking in a circle, so I'm gonna stop. But my big underlined point is we gotta listen to each other and to our young people in particular, because that's gonna be the way forward. I heard once that everybody over 35 should have a mentor who is under 35. And as a person who quickly approaches 36, I am in the market for an under 35 mentor, so. Okay. Caitlin has called Ellie, so I need someone else. And I would be happy to have several, especially in the context of this community, which many younger people know better than I do, because they grew up here. All right. Last question in the physical box. Jeff Mihal asks, on the subject of holiday gifts, what was the best and/or worst present you ever received? It's a really hard question, actually. I'm gonna, for the moment, say that one of the best presents I've ever received was this shirt. Caitlin bought me this for this Christmas, and it, on top of being a rainbow plaid shirt, which really does things for me vibe-wise. It is a shirt from a company that I have wanted a shirt from for a very long time, but they were slightly more expensive than I was willing to purchase for myself. The clothes that I like to wear in the size that I am are not cheap, and so I often am waiting and waiting and waiting. And so instead of making me wait until I decided I could afford it, Caitlin bought this for me, and now I have it. A combination best and worst gift experience I have ever had was when I turned 10, my parents bought me a pool, which was really cool. That's a very cool thing to do. Also very weird, extremely strange. But what sucked about it was my birthday is in April, and instead of saying, hey, we're gonna get a pool installed this summer, they put a kiddie pool in the backyard and said, we know you've wanted a pool, there it is. I cried. And they laughed. Don't do that. That's not a great gift-giving experience. The pool, however, was great for the next 15 years of my life, so good. All right, last question in the digital box, and then if you have had questions come up during this time, if you want to ask them during community sharing, I will pop up to the mic and give a very brief answer so that we can get out of here something on time, because I need to drive to Ohio this afternoon. So the last question I have is, do you believe that most people are queer? How does that change the dynamic of LGBTQ plus movements and the dynamics of who is welcome in queer spaces? Well, no, I don't believe that most people are queer. I don't find this person's suggestion, but I find the thing people say about, well, everybody's a little queer, pretty insulting. While I don't necessarily believe that a lot of people are as strictly heterosexual as they would like to announce to the world that they are, and the louder they want to announce it, the less I'm given to believe it, I don't think that being attracted to people of your same sex makes you queer, in part because queer is specific to me. I know that I use the word queer pretty broadly, but I do mean queer distinct from gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, etc. Because queer is political, queer is ethical, queer is philosophical in a way that simply being gay is not. There are quite a number of gay people who manage to be very conservative. Do I know how they do it? No, I do not, but they do. There are a number of gay people who are very attached to the Republican Party. Do I know how they do that? No, I do not, but they do. They are not gay, but I don't buy them as queer. Queer to me is about this like reimagining of what can be. And if the way that you live your life is as cookie cutter conservative as every straight couple that lives on Capitol Hill, okay, you're gay, but you're not resisting that normative experience in the way that I am, in the way that queer people are. Queer is about creativity and a subversion of the idea that there is a right way to do things. Much bigger than simply who you are attracted to, a way of being. And that does actually have some effect on how organizing works and also who is welcome in queer spaces as opposed to LGBT spaces. One of the effects on organizing is that sometimes when we're organizing for things that are gay rights, lesbian rights, there's a oneness between those conservatives and I, despite my deep confusion about it. Right? Marriage equality was a thing that we actually had quite a bit of agreement on, but not everything is, right? For me, if something doesn't care about or apply to trans sex workers who live on the street or disabled queer kids, then it's not queer. It's something else, and it is not addressing the deepest needs of the community that I belong to. Now, in a social space or a hangout space, a coffee shop, a bar, what have you, queer can actually mean that more people can be there than people who are LGBT identified, because you can have a politic that doesn't necessarily make you queer, but makes you fit in nicely. I will point out the difference. The difference between an LGBT space with straight people in it and a queer space with straight allies in it is a gay bar with a bachelorette party in it. Have any of you ever been at a gay bar when there's a bachelorette party in it? It's horrible. It's a nightmare. I hate it so much because it is a novelty for them. They are there to gawk at what is life and culture for those of us who are safe in that space. It makes it a real weird space for lesbians and sapphic people, people who are attracted to women, because they're not expecting, I'm gonna say us, and we're gonna just leave gender as a wiggly thing aside. They're not expecting us. They think gay means gay men who they think of as all, yes, girl, snap, slay. And it becomes really fetishistic, not in a sexual way, but in a really dehumanizing, really gawking way. And then if you happen to be in the shape that someone thinks you are a woman and you happen to hit on a woman who is at the gay bar, they are often very offended. You cannot go into a gay bar and be offended when gay people hit on you. Like you can't go to the zoo and be surprised when there's a tiger there. That's where they live. So that is a long and also kind of brief answer about that. But fundamentally, I don't think that everybody is queer. I am pretty sure that some people are straight. I am pretty sure that some people are straight because we have a weird experience sometimes where Caitlin and I will have dinner with Robin and Mike, and Caitlin and I will leave and be like, something about that was really heterosexual. What was it? It was Robin. We love Robin so much, and we forget. I live in a world where I can forget that people are straight sometimes. So it's real that people are straight. I'm not interested in telling anybody that their self-identification isn't true, and I experience some people as very straight and other people as, like, okay, man, sure, whatever you say. And that's my own personal judgment that doesn't need to enter into anything else. So those are all of my questions that I had in the box, physically and virtually. As I said, if you have a question that came up and you want to ask it briefly during the comment period, I will answer it even more briefly than I answered these ones, because I think we all have like afternoons we'd like to get to, and I also, again, need to drive to Ohio this afternoon. Thank you all so much for your questions, for your presence here today, for your presence in this community all kinds of times. I hope that during the next week of your life, you can forget what time is, that you can just live in that weird liminal end of the year space and enjoy it instead of being disoriented in a bad way about it. And if you have things that require you to pay attention to what the days are, I hope that they are easy, that they are fulfilling, or at least that they don't last very long. Thank you.